Good evening. You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you as usual from the Pinellas Palace just west of Orlando, Florida. And I'm furiously kind of a minute or two behind because I got this plane flying behind me, and it must be having something to do with what's on my screen because it's that 1959 movie, North by Northwest with Alfred Hitchcock. And I'm trying to talk with RDV from the Great Midwest as we review this Hitchcock film. But I'll start off RDV by saying this. I don't remember the first time I seen North by Northwest, but I remember watching it going, wow, it's an older movie. And outside of Humphrey Bogart films, this is a movie that when I watched it, I thought, wow, what a big feeling movie. And I'll talk about that a little bit with some key scenes as we dive into this gem. Everyone loves Alfred Hitchcock, allegedly. I remember the TV show growing up, watched as a kid, but I have to make a confession. Not just Usher's not the only one that does that. I'm telling you, as a kid in the 80s, when they would have retro films show up, RDV, this is one of the first ones that I saw on a big screen. And this, along with a few others, kind of made me go, oh, some of the stuff from way back when doesn't suck, because there's something to be said about Cary Grant. You can say he's a little swishy, he's a little bit whatever like that, but he's a very polished individual. He is a gentleman in here. There's something about the way Hitchcock films a lot of his films, and this one in particular makes you feel like you could step out. If you could walk into your television set, you would be right there in the late 50s here with the fashion and the style and stuff. I love a lot of what he's got going on in this and a couple other films from the 50s and 60s. What's your initial take on this? Is it a first watch for you, sir?
This is not. This is a multiple watch for me. I can't remember how many times I've watched it. I'm trying to remember, when did the original Fugitive TV show come out? 63. So this is the Fugitive before the Fugitive, kind of. Basically, a guy gets mistaken for a spy by Germans.
The baddies.
They don't call them Germans, but they kind of comes off like they could be Nazi.
James Mason, sir. I was pumping big time about this.
I was hoping that he'd be drunk during this because I love drunk James Mason. But
well, you had a lot to say about Salem's Lot when we reviewed the 2024 movie, and I always think of James Mason and the TV or the movie from the 70s, but he's been good for a very long time. James Mason.
Yeah. He is the heavy in this. You also got the beautiful Eva Marie Saint, who can or cannot be trusted. I will not spoil that for you, but if you have never seen this movie, you do need to go see it, especially if you like the Harrison Ford movie, The Fugitive, which is based on the TV show from 1963. But before this,
Cary, Quinn Martin production.
Cary, not a Dan Curtis. Screw that guy. Cary Grant is a guy who basically ends up being mistaken for a spy. They tried to bump him off, getting him real drunk, and then have him crash off a cliff. And then he's being chased across because he basically put out word out that he's wanted for murder, a murder they know that he didn't really commit. And he's got the U.S. government chasing after. He's got the supposed baddies, but basically at this point they come off as Nazis, like they're trying to get stolen paintings. I guess that's what it is towards the end here. But no, this is fun. You get to see. Was it the Central? Is it Grand Central Station or is it the airport at the end? I think they're at. But a lot of older locations. I love watching these older movies because everything's been so modernized until 2024. None of the buildings look the same. If they're heavily just modernized, and the cars.
You bring up a really, really good point there, RDV, because this is late 50s. This is the post-war boom in the United States.
Yes.
When you watch this film, it's free on Tubi TV here in the United States. The colors are so rich. I love the fact that it sounds simple, but yet people don't do it. Even in today's movies, they get it wrong despite the big budgets. As these are how suits are supposed to look on men. I'm going fashionista for a minute, which is what suits, I do. Man. Yep. But you got the half-inch collar on both sides, which means it's been tailored, fitted, bespoke is the term back then. That was just how people did it, right. And nothing looks dated. It's the cuff length, everything's fine, and he just looks so great in a suit. This is almost like a James Bond kind of thing because there's a lot of big set pieces here too.
Yeah. This is a movie.
Ladies and gentlemen, the pocket handkerchief, despite the 3 or 4 different ways you can fold it, is supposed to match the shirt, not the fucking tie. Get it right.
Yeah,
Pardon that, but
James Bond.
Well, no, but I mean, it's just been bastardized, and everybody, if they've got a mustache, they got it trimmed above the lip a little bit. Yeah. If they've got sideburns, they're cleanly chopped. And also, I have to bring up too, for the young 20-something Professor Pixel is a part of this channel as well. He's covered a lot of stuff with me on other television shows there too. And most recently, we have covered. We're in the process of doing Forever Night, but we keep referencing back on our Columbo review, and as well as Mission Impossible Season 1 about a guy that is in there that's an actor in this film, and he plays one of the baddies in it, and he's in here too. He's the guy that doesn't kind of speak, and it's just absolutely tremendous. And when I watched this recently, I went, "Oh God, I totally forgot that he's in here." His name escapes me off the top of my head. It'll pop in a minute. Martin Landau, that's it. But I agree with you. This film is just such a pleasure to watch. Visually watching it, it's so rich looking. It looks like it's been shot present time, doesn't it? It's very warm.
So I want to bring out Hitchcock movies. They usually have an identifying key factor for each movie. Well, I believe it was that rope was the rope. That was you had Psycho was the shower scene.
Mm-hmm.
This, as it shows on the cover, that's why they put it on the cover, is the plane scene, which takes place in Wisconsin. He's at a bus stop. This plane pretty much just comes out of nowhere, starting. He has to keep dive bombing. He ducks down. Finally, after the plane crashes, he basically goes to the bus, gets on the bus, and leaves. Like, it is the most, like, you would say, like, wow, that doesn't sound very climactic, but it is, because he nearly gets hit a couple times. And I said, this is a movie where you can't trust anyone, even the beautiful Eva Marie Saint, which I think this is her first role, right? I think
it's earlier in her career at the very least, and I would say to that while we're talking about some of the set pieces, I will disagree and say I think the best one's the actual ending one, which we'll get to here shortly. But like I say, watching it, when you see that he's being chased, you don't have to have, yes, there are guns in here, but it's not like today's guns, right? You don't have to have martial arts. You don't have to all this stuff. Just people putting on gloves and stalking, and you sitting there watching. This is what the old expression that people always talk about with tension in movies is they say, oh, do it like how Alfred Hitchcock did it. Show people talking at a table, but show a bomb underneath the table so something's going to go off so you can see it doing it.
Or a gun under the table. Yeah,
And I don't always agree with that, but just watching him navigate through all these situations with a gentlemanly sort of response, I think is pretty damn good. If I recall correctly, he was possibly considered as a role for James Bond, because this would only be a few years before they did Dr. No, I think in 1962 it was, so 2-3 years before, but probably a little bit old for the role, but that's where we start to know Sean Connery.
For me, like I said, the plane scene at the very beginning where they force him to drink, and then he looks up behind the plane, the wheel, and he's swerving. His visions going in and out, and he able at the last minute to pull himself from crashing over the cliff, And then, like I said, it's just no one believes him. This is
when it was just sexy to be out and about traveling, whether it's the trains or planes or anything.
What do you think they got the ideas for a lot of the Mission Impossible movies?
No, I agree with you totally. And it's. I've been on train. I've done some traveling. I'm sure everybody's got their experiences around the world doing stuff, but there's just a patience with it where you see people dressed nice, minding their own business, their own thing. It's not chaotic like it is now with TSA and all that. It just, there's romanticism is what I'm saying about this film that's very prevalent. And it really struck me when I watched it again here recently, just how much it sticks out, because you're right. Even where you're saying, what is she? She's blonde. She's staring, right through him and all that. And even though the background's the projected screen, it still looks good. You can almost watch the background as they're on the train or when they're driving around, and it's fake. Even the matte paintings in here, Matte, I believe it's spelled, are fake, but who cares? They look so good. It allows you to go, yeah, I know it's fake, but it doesn't screw, honestly, and this is something I wanted to bring up, it doesn't screw with my senses as much as bad CGI does, because I'm convinced there's almost no good CGI anymore because it lacks a certain depth to it or whatever. The CGI to me can't seem to capture the way even a projected background on film can. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the car scene where he's basically driving over with Cliff, that's a green screen behind him, isn't it? And then they cut to actually people driving like they used to do back in the day.
I think that's what they call a rear projection. So it's actually being projected while they then film on top of that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with CGI, you can just have somebody standing there walking. Everything gets filled in digitally now, but it lacks a warmth to it that you would still see in these old films.
Yeah. Just looking at all the different actors in here, because I don't recognize all, but man, Martin Landau, obviously they always have Leo G. Carroll, Josephine Hutchinson, Philip Ober. Just a lot of guys, Adam Williams, which is funny because I'm listing up all these names. I don't know who these people are, like I said, but back then, these might have been actual B-list actors that people know. Nowadays, Yeah, unless you've seen them, recognize them in a movie, you don't really know who they are.
The other thing too is that when you watch these films, I'm talking about the set designs and everything too, and how rich the film looks. Is that it seems like it's very professional. Like there's no just detailed about it. A lot of times, even when you're watching a TV show today, even if it's a remake or something brand new, either it's the old classic 3-camera kind of sitcom shot there with the one main room and some other stuff, or it's just very busy in the background that's really not needed for the story that you're trying to convey. And so I appreciate Hitchcock's ability to kind of like dance between, as they say, riding on a train and making sweet, sweet love to this blonde woman he's relatively met. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of nowhere, he's being gunned down and he goes into a cornfield. Because if you haven't been in a cornfield, ladies and gentlemen, it can get pretty high and you can get disoriented pretty easily too. So seeing somebody like that in the suit kind of, survive all that's interesting, because you do not get the sense that this is a guy that's like Jason Bourne, right? I mean, that's where everything was going in the past 20 plus years,
he's a
right?
New York City, advertising executive.
He's a muckety muck. He's a bigwig. He's a corner office guy. He's not a dude bro or anything like that. But damn it, he knows how to like put his hand in his pocket and hold a drink and talk.
Well, I think a lot of guys back then knew simple etiquette. It was instilled into you by your parents, probably. And just things you did in public, the way you held yourself, the way you acted around women, the way you acted. It just because your reputation was everything. If you had a bad reputation, you did not get hired anywhere.
Yeah. I tell you that one of the other things that's interesting, if you look at the movie from this perspective, is that talk about James Mason. Obviously, people, if they're a James Mason fan, you might remember him from, was it 79 from Salem's Lot, which I mentioned earlier. He's been, Bill was a hater. He does an impression of him all the time. He likes a lot of older actors. He's an 80s kid.
Our trusty sidekick on our channel, Geeky Puppet Show, does a perfect James Mason, but then he adds the drunkenness to it. So it's even better.
Well, James Mason was known for Lolita, and so that kind of was very, at the time, an older man, younger woman, teenage girl kind of getting into it was a real big deal at the time. That's Nabokov, obviously, the book. And I think with James Mason, when you look at the way films have gone, where you can show people kissing, you can show a little bit of say, her back, right? But not the full-on effect of them like you would in the film today. It's hinted you don't have to have them full blown out sex to get the point across that they're intimate right now, right? I think that when you watch this film, you see, it has its action set pieces, but it's not over the top action. It's not what we talk about when we review action films, like with Jackie Chan, the different type of templates and those things here. It literally is somebody being chased. And what makes it big feeling to me too is cross country. Because I will tell you, my favorite part of this whole movie is I feel like it keeps building and building and building. And I'm going to relate this to a James Bond movie that's I think it's Pierce Brosnan's best one, and it's not GoldenEye, ladies and gentlemen. It's The World Is Not Enough. Where at the beginning he's going into a bank to get some information from somebody, and then they're in Bilbao, Spain, and just the background and shots of it's just very kind of cool how it happens. So you go, okay, what's going on here in the bank, right? And then there's other stuff that happens, and we don't even have to talk about the action here. There's something about them being, up in the mountains, right? And you feel that because they keep showing the 4 different presidents up there, that somehow that's going to be a part of it, right? Because the only time we've talked about mountains a little bit is in some old bogey films or things too. Yeah. Not that where they're going to be is prevalent, and that's what James Bond films do, and this film does that as well.
This is the only movie I know other than National Treasure that features Mount Rushmore as a place where people are fighting on.
Yeah, and I went to Yosemite some years back in California, and it looked a lot like this. And where there's a scene in here where James Mason actually confronts them and are having a discussion, and it's getting towards the end, and we know it's going to end up there, right? But I'm going, if you've ever been to a big park like this, you get that feeling of how it just is with people going in the background. So sometimes the beauty of these shots isn't these people, having an over the camera shot where it goes back and forth, the 2-camera shot. It's them side by side looking at each other, and then you watch everything that goes on in the background. It just looks like it, and that is spellbinding in a way. And I think this is very good. And of course you go, well, what cufflink does he have on? Is it the gold one? Is it the silver one? How does he keep his hands still while they're talking? That's acting, ladies and gentlemen. And James Mason is just so calm. He's so fucking creepy to me. I've always loved him as a kid. He's terrified the shit out of me. He's just, yelling, screaming, talking slow, talking like this. It doesn't make you a villain. There's something in your eyes and the way you convey it on your face, and he does it so good.
He's very intellectual, perceptive. You know, he can tell everything. I said, like, it's a guy who carries himself. He's very confident, and if he's not, he's really good at bluffing it. You know.
Yeah. One more thing I want to bring up.
I don't mess with actors because actors you don't know if they're acting. You know, sometimes they're crazy people.
they can own it, right?
Yeah.
I think that there's a scene in here where he ends up walking to this. I think it's a painting, but it's I call it the California house because it looks like a California house, but it's that one where at night he's kind of walking up after this conversation. And I remember as a kid looking at that going, oh my God, look how cool looking this house is. And some years back on this channel, we did a Christopher Walken film.
Oh.
That had Natalie Wood's last movie in it.
Yeah.
And what was interesting about it was they were in a house it was in a triangle, which is Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, North Carolina at the time. But it was interesting because I was like, this house looks cool. What's the deal with it? And I looked it up. And I'd forgot that when the government started really expanding in the 50s and 60s, they kind of turned over from their classical architecture, which a lot of it you would see in Washington, D.C., or older buildings that we've talked about, San Francisco and such, to more of what was called a brutalist, really disgusting looking kind of setup. And it's basically like communist kind of inspired in that they're just blocky, disgusting. You know, I've mentioned for generations now how high schools are designed after a jail, seriously, with a modern courtyard and everything. It's just a jail thing. But here, watch them go up to this house, and it's where the bad guys are at. It's the secret, not underground layer, above ground layer, and right there in the shadows of Mount Rushmore. This just is cool. It's really awesome to watch. It almost makes you feel like because you're an everyman like he is here, that you could be accidentally pointed out and get chased too, right? I mean, it's an adventure film. That's how I look at it.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to look up because she's asking about James Mason within the original Journey to the Center of the Earth. I don't think he was.
Yeah, well, basically,
he was in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which I really love.
Yeah. No, but I like voyeurism in movies, and I just don't mean necessarily sexually, but like looking at stuff, gathering information. In a movie that we recently have covered offline, which will debut, we're doing a Humphrey Bogart film called Sahara from the 40s. And it's not really a war film in that there's a lot of gunning and shooting and dying. It's a drama, right? But you feel what's going on with the war because of how it affects the companies that are involved. And you get that here too. And there's a lot of little binocular spying and looking around trying to judge things.
Best way to describe it, like I said, Sahara to me, that's will be airing on Tuesday. We recorded that. It's kind of like watching Flight of the Phoenix. You know, watching what happens when you put the people all in one room and there's limited food, water, you know, and it's hot. You know, it's just like, so it's kind of the same thing. You put all these people into this situation where they're trying to get to, well, Cary Grant, who you talk about his acting and stuff, and him and Gregory Peck are at the same level. Whenever I watch a movie with them, I respect the hell out of them because
I think Peck reminds me of more of stoic internal kind of guy. Who's Cary Grant's more of the playboyish type. I agree with you. They're like flip sides of the same coin, the way they carry themselves.
When they're serious, Gregory Peck, when he starts getting that serious stuff, like in Guns and Navarone, or in To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yep.
He get that same seriousness, and that's kind of how I feel like Liam Neeson sometimes. He almost reminds me of
Peckish rather than Grantish. Yes.
Happy birthday, early birthday. You know, it's on Tuesday. It's gonna be her birthday. Nice. Happy 21, right? No, we start counting back in years, right? No.
You're an extremist if you're on this channel.
Exactly. We're extremely against aging. We're anti-aging here. No, like I said, I love Gregory Peck movies. I love Cary Grant movies. Cary Grant, we did another one, I believe. I thought we did. It was the one that John Woo remade. It was Notorious, right? Wasn't that Cary Grant? Am I thinking that someone else? Because now we reviewed Notorious.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up some of the older actors because people remember these names, and part of it is because when you look at this guy, you say, hey, he seems like an A-lister. He's got a sharp wit. He reminds you of the Roger Moorish type of James Bond rather than a Sean Connery, right? And what better way to kind of cap off the suspension and all that too than to have a big chase where they get away from the bad guys here, like I say, on Mount Rushmore. And again, even though it's a matte painting, even though he's got the woman with him and all that too, watching them trying to negotiate all this, it's still entertaining today. I think it still holds up. You know, one of the biggest duds out of the 80s was one we reviewed called Remo Williams, where they had a badass action set piece while I was remodeling the Statue of Liberty. That's pretty cool. What do you think of when you watch something like that a generation ago? More than that, actually. Do you think of this film, right? That's what I mean by this film. I think it's interesting. It starts off as you're kind of like a nobody. By the end, it's like you're James Bond, because you're in a big action set piece. You got a woman that you meet mysteriously and all that. You got people chasing you, and it doesn't really matter why. It just matters that you figure out how to deal with it, right? I think it's great, and I love the way it looks with them traveling on here. The score helps there too, but what more can you really do at this time, right?
The funny thing is, this is a serious version of the Richard Grieco one. Let's go kill.
Don't bring Richard Grieco in this conversation. So.
We always bring Richard Grieco and everything. He's awesome. Screw Johnny Depp. Grieco's the man. Like I said, this is a fun movie. If you like the movies like The Fugitive, it's just equally as fun. And if you are a fan of Walter, or not Walter Peck. Gregor Peck. Sorry, not Walter Peck. That's a funny of a guy. But
he did when he tossed him over the side there.
If you like Gregor Peck and you've never seen a Cary Grant movie, I recommend this and Notorious.
Yes.
Also, what was the other one? Was To Catch a Thief?
To Catch a Thief, 1955, I believe. That's a really good one too. I like that a lot. That's
I love these. I love fugitive chase movies. That's what I like, is spy stuff. Other recommendations similar to this, kind of it's a little bit it's loosely similar, would be Spy Game, Robert Redford.
We like Spy Game a lot. I know that.
We're gonna review that again because I think we did review it or just talked about it, but it's time for an update.
Yeah.
It's like Commando. We gotta review it at least once a year.
Yeah.
But no, this is ultimately one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Alfred Hitchcock movie.
I think it's very significant.
It's just something about it. It's like going from A to B. It's like, it doesn't need to be overly produced. When people say like, "Oh, I want it to be like cinema," no, like this is simple. A to B. And it's just like what you're gonna get and you enjoy it. Guy's being chased. He's framed for a murder he didn't do. And just trying to prove his innocence. Well, also he's got the feds after him. He's got the Germans after him. He's got this woman who he kind of likes but doesn't trust her. And I said at the end, it takes place at the auction. A room, and just
the property of a lady for you Bond fans.
Yeah. So this literally could be a Bond movie because you have the pretty girl, you have the bad guys, then you have the Americans who are going after the rogue agent, and at the end, I love it because we let them believe we're actually the ones that put the thing out saying that you're the spy. Well, thanks, American government. Thanks. Make me the patsy. Hang him out to dry. He's like, and they're like, without your help, you being the patsy, we couldn't have caught these criminals. Like, dicks. So, like I said, it's a very fun movie. And I said, I will always love. Like I said, for me, it's the plane. He's running. He's dodging because it's a plane. There's no gunfire. If I remember, I don't remember if there's any gunfire in this. I think it's just him just flying, dive bombing.
Well, a little bit, yeah, but
there's a little bit of gunfire, but not much.
One of the final things I'll say about this film is that it's interesting because we talked about how after World War II, there's a post-war boom here in the United States, and that's if it wasn't clear by World War II that America's biggest growth spurt was actually pre-World War I, but really this was the last real big boom we had here in the United States. I think that's when Bretton Woods in the 50s here and everything else going on too economically. Everyone looked at the United States as being the country in such a short period of time. This young country all of a sudden dominated everything. And it's interesting because when I look at Alfred Hitchcock, I don't think about how he was kind of a wormy, slimy bastard. You know, we could say that about a lot of actors, directors, writers in Hollywood in general. We're here for entertainment value. I think Cary Grant is a very pleasant distraction when it comes to it. You can get very particular about stuff, but here's the thing. There's no, in my mind, other than perhaps some stuff sexually speaking with Alfred Hitchcock, from what I recall in a lot of his movies, there's really nothing more to it as far as like a political undertone or this or that. You've got bad guys that are the bad guys because it's convenient for them to be the bad ones. It's not because he's pushing something. Today, a lot of people want to use, some messaging in their movies and whatnot too, just because to do it. I don't really get too much of that here at all. Again, the mistaken identity is pretty much what Alfred Hitchcock's been known to do for quite some time to this point here. I just think is very easy to watch without being completely watered down. I think a kid could watch it and understand what's going on, and an older person, somebody that's really old, and around, probably remember certain things about them. Might make the movie even better. I don't know, but it's like I said at the beginning, it's one of the few films I saw, I think, on the big screen in color, and I was just like, man, It did not disappoint. Watching it on the small screen or now, like on Tubi, it still looks so damn good. It really is a treat to watch, and I go, wow. Imagine going to the theater back then and seeing something like this. How cool is that?
I was looking up the confirm my source as far as where the thing that the crop duster chase was seeing. There's conflicting reports. Some say Indiana, some say California. I'll just say this: California doesn't have freaking crops.
Oh, the Valley does. That's where most of the production's made. I'm just saying.
Back then, maybe I wouldn't think it now.
Yeah, it's just California's a little weird, but it's just they do produce a lot. It's just things have gotten really weird in the 60+ years since this movie's come out.
But Grand Central Station, as I was the terminal, yes. Grand Central Terminal,
yes,
is where it's at the end. And just looking at that, the cars, the way people are dressed, and then go watch a movie today that films that same location, and look at that, it's like everybody's gaudy on their cell phones, and just like it's like Blast in the Past. You ever watch that movie where he gets out of the vault, and he's like, "Look, all the mutants and freaks go back down to the vault." Yeah.
I'm going to mention a really shitty movie and compare it to this film for a certain reason. And it's one I watched on Netflix recently called Under Paris. And this is a movie that when I was reading the description along the lines of Paris was awarded like the Olympics or whatever, right? So they're going to have everything going on. But somehow there's a man-eating shark in this. I call it the Seine River. I don't really know the correct pronunciation.
Is it a land shark?
River. No, it's not a land shark. It's in the river that cuts through Paris, right? And if you've been to Paris, you know that right downtown there, it's
you watch a shark
really
movie?
nice.
Is it this is?
Will you fucking listen? Yes, it's a shark movie because it's a really, really bad B-level movie. But here's the thing about the way it's filmed. Yes, the stupid mayor or whatever you call it of DC is a woman who wants to go ahead and have the events continue. So she lets everybody do all the swimming there so that you're going to get all eaten up. And of course, where do the sharks reside? And if you know Paris at all, the answer is the catacombs. So it's kind of hokey sounding, but the one thing that was really good about this film is that if you've been to Paris, if you've walked along that riverbank, nothing's changed, right? But the way they show it, you feel like you're out there and that you could go into the river. That's what this film does really well. There's a thing to it. Whereas if you're watching Jason Bourne, they're in Paris, but you don't feel like you're in Paris.
You're right.
A nice backdrop.
Nothing's changed in Paris. You don't go swimming in the water because it's pee and poop.
Well, I won't disagree. It's probably cleaner than what it was, but it's the same thing with Venice. If you've been to Venice, you're like, yeah, Venice is really, really small. And I thought it's kind of funny because, again, think about what Hitchcock had to go through to film this. Yeah. Even with the matte paintings, like to have the vision of going, hey, we're going to go to a train. We're going to have a plane. We're going to be in the middle of nowhere. We're going to be in an executive building. He takes you through all these things. He speeds up. He slows down. He's going from big set piece to big set piece to a train to a romance to the bad guys to the secret above ground layer to Mount Rushmore. That's freaking cool as hell to me at all. It's this, we haven't done a lot of Hitchcock on this channel, and I get made fun of too for really saying that Hitchcock's a great director, but I love Brian De Palma as well, and Body Double, probably one of our most well-received movies here on the Extreme Movie Show. People go, oh, it's the best movie that Hitchcock's never done, and he ripped off Hitchcock. No, it's just he understood some stuff that Hitchcock was doing. Hitchcock had an eye, I'm telling you.
I think Barbarian Queen might be giving it a run for its money soon.
Yeah, give it some time, right? I mean,
every day there's like 100 views on that freaking video.
Yeah, something about Lana Clarkson. I don't know what it is.
I don't know either. I mean, a hot chick with a sword. Yeah.
When you think of Alfred Hitchcock, does anything come to mind for you?
Hitchcock.
Besides the birds.
Okay, so the first thing when people says Hitchcock is Psycho, because that's all everybody's talk about Psycho. The point where it makes me gag. It's like, I understand it's a good movie, but there's other Hitchcock movies. I brought up Rope earlier. That's a simple movie, but effective. It does what it needs to do, and it's a good movie. North by Northwest, I love this better than Psycho. Just because the type of movie it is. This is a fugitive chase spy movie.
Yeah.
So you I think you mentioned earlier before that Jimmy Stewart originally was going to be cast in this role, or assumed he would. I guess you brought up Jimmy Stewart.
No, for James Bond, I think that Cary Grant was, it was either he's the model or he had a potential.
So apparently, Jimmy Stewart thought he was going to get this role because he just did Vertical with
yes,
Hitchcock.
Yeah.
So Hitchcock didn't want him for the role. He wanted Cary Grant, so he purposely delayed the production of this movie so he could safely offer the role to Jimmy Stewart, knowing that he was too busy doing another movie. What a dick move, but got out of it.
But your movie, I mean, if you got the right to do all that, I got no problem with that.
But I mean, like, they probably didn't want to sour their relationship.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm so glad we got Cary Grant. Jimmy Stewart, God bless him, I love him in most things, but him in a movie like this, I don't think it would have worked. He worked better in his other movie, with the plane, Spirit of St. Louis. That's more his speed.
Yes. Yes. To me, Stewart seemed like he would have been more. He would have been less like Roger Moore-ish, James Bond type. It would have been more of almost. God, I hate to say it because he's not very sharp. Either Sean Connery, although he's not a big ladies man, but no, Timothy Dalton was cool. No, he'd have been more like Daniel Craig, I think, just a little more. I think just coming at you. That's the vibe I get from him, in his face.
Like I said, I'm not the biggest Daniel Craig person, if a fan of it, but what made it for Daniel Craig for me liking him was Casino Royale, the filming locations, chase scenes, Venice, I believe is where it's at the end.
Yes,
and just on the waterfront.
I want to bring one thing up unrelated and try to relate it to this too, because I want your input on it, because this is a you were right and I was wrong kind of thing to it, right? There's few actors that when you hear their names, Humphrey Bogart is an old classic one. We'll watch anything because he's in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, Russell Crowe's another guy that's done that. I've watched him for a long time. Haven't seen all of his films, but seen a great many of them. I just think the guy's a great actor. So I made the mistake of, and hear me out before you interject, because I will give it for. I knew nothing about Craven the Hunter other than Russell Crowe's, and I thought, maybe he's going to be the bad guy or something. Russell Crowe's in it. Let me watch it, right? And so I watch it, and apparently this movie had been delayed like 2 years or intentionally not put out because it was so bad. Without knowing anything about it, I thought it was absolute trash. I thought it was horrible. The main guy, they give him the shirt off scene or whatever, so you can see he's got like 8%, 10% body fat.
Taylor Johnson,
which is supposed to be the leading candidate for James Bond. And I got to be honest, I don't see it.
James Bond's British.
Well, and the thing too is once I mentioned to you and you kind of laughed at me saying, "Oh, it looks like trash," I thought the trailer wasn't horrible. I didn't know what it was about. When you explained to me how they totally changed and everything else there too, I'm like, I wish I kind of knew that ahead of time, and before I shot myself in the foot, because when you get somebody like me that may be watching something for the first time or not have experience in an area, you don't know what to expect. If we're here talking about an old movie like this, I look at somebody like Cary Grant and I go, man, if Cary Grant's in it, go watch it. It's not going to be bad, right?
Craven is on a level of stupidity. If they didn't have James Bond, they didn't have the rights to James Bond. They just took Blofeld or whatever his name, Blofeld, and made him an anti-hero, having him fight against other people, and Jaws, or any of those guys, the henchmen, the villains, as a hero of movies. Like, I don't want to watch anti-heroes.
No,
that's not what I'm watching the movie for. That's why Sony movies ultimately fail, because these are characters that are built as villains for Spider-Man, and that's a whole nother can of worms. I don't want to get into, because I'll be bitching and I'll be drinking and I'll be smoking towards the end of this. I'll be like Charlie Day at the end. They're all connected. it's like at the end.
I'll finish by saying this with North by Northwest. Fantastic film. It's always worth it. I'm sure many people in chat right now have already seen it. A lot of the extremists, with the channel have seen it as well. I know it's not a first watch for you or for me. Alfred Hitchcock is one of the first names that comes to my mind because I still even remember to this day the first time I sat down to watch Psycho and The Birds and all that with my parents, who said, "Oh, you've got to watch this. It's finally out." And we would sit down and we watch it back in the big old wooden television set in the living room back in the 80s. So that was always special for me. But at the same time, he's the kind of guy that made movies a certain way. And so you go, oh, that's a Hitchcock film. Like me, I'm a big John Carpenter mark. I go, oh, that's very John Carpenter-ish or whatever. And so to me, I just want to close by saying absolutely check it out. It's worth watching. Check it out again. I hadn't watched it in years, but damn, it's still good. Final thoughts from you, sir.
Final thoughts, and you can find this movie at pretty much anywhere nowadays. It's on Blu-ray. And the decent quality on Blu-ray, the audio, video is exceeds over 10. It's cranked up to 20. Cary Grant is a man's man in this movie. And if you're a person that loves the Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movies or stuff like Reacher, you're gonna like this. This is basically a guy on the run. And just people are trying to kill him and he's trying to prove his innocence, try to stay alive, and it's all done in the 1950s.
Chase movies are great, aren't they?
Yeah, they are great.
Chase movies are fun.
There's no comedy laugh tracks in this. This is all seriousness. It's a thriller.
When I think it gets smart, I think I got killed by that one line. Really? Who throws their shoe?
Yeah, I do not want to get smart. If this had been, Marani's right. If Jimmy Stewart had been in the lead, this would be get smart.
Get stupid. Yo.
And then you said that you brought up the laugh track. Oh my gosh.
I can't stand laugh track.
Get rid of laugh tracks out of shows, and the characters come up with creepy. They were showing that somebody did with Friends. They took the laugh track out, and the jokes were just freaking creepy. The way they came off, it's like because there's no one laughing, it's awkward because it's not because normally when people laugh, it's you tell a joke, who's over on screen with you laughs, but if you're relying on a laugh track all the time, it's downright creepy because no one's laughing. You're just telling jokes and no one's responding.
It's an interesting viewpoint too. I see Brian just putting in there about Father Goose. And I was a male ward bride, and that reads to Harlequin, right? I was a male war bride. I can't even say it without laughing or whatever. Or as somebody once had what was the algorithm I saw? You and I had talked about doing some Hallmark Christmas movies as a yuck on here, right? Because we'll tackle anything.
Trying to find
how they have 3 words for it. You could say, oh, if it's going to have this, it's going to have name of place. It's going to have
it's either they're a tree farmer, or they're a prince, or something like that. Insurance broker or whatever, or and then it's like. And then you have the woman who's either she's happily married or something, and then she's fantasizing about what her life would be if she never took her job. They basically just repeat the same things. It's insert new blonde. No matter what character it is, you can change them out at the same roles and just rotate them. I forgot there's this really cool comedian who does slideshow presentations all the time. It's his gimmick, and he was saying he's like just like. Just roll the dice and you got a movie, and it adds up. It's either there's like the maid or she's it's just like Hallmark recycles the same movies over and over with different actresses. And I don't think a lot of people notice, or I think the women that do watch this don't care. No. Because it's like reading a crappy romance novel from Walmart.
So, it's interesting you say that because the whole thing too here with a lot more content being produced these days with all the streaming channels and all that, there's 2 quick things that come to mind. That one, when you talk about books people don't read anymore, I'm not going to call them fantasy, but I'll say romance novels were probably 2/3 to 3/4 of all book sales being bought by women, and yet there was a formula for it. And don't look, if I'm consulting manufacturing privately on the side as a profession of mine, and tell people to sit there and say, hey, you can look at things this way or that way. It doesn't matter what the object is. It just matters that it's done. People like to call it a widget. That's all that really matters. Some people get offended by that. It's the same thing here. It's a product, right? The interesting phrase that I've heard the past year or two that we have not really brought up because we don't try to get into too much. We try to just talk content is second screen. And what that means is you put something out that's just sort of there. Like there was one movie, I think also Netflix, where it's kind of like Speed in an airport or something like that, and Jason Bateman is like supposedly the bad guy, and we're not sure what, and it's this dude.
The new one that's out, yeah.
I forget the name of it, but it's just completely forgettable. It really kind of sucks if you think about it. It's almost insulting when you actively think about it. But Netflix, and I guess a lot of people are just content with probably putting out 50% of their stuff as being trash, as long as it makes a little bit of money back, most of it. And the idea is that you have it on in your living room while you're sitting there, either on your phone or on your Kindle or your iPad, or you're cooking dinner, something like that, the second screen. So that's what all these studios do. So the whole thing that you mentioned before about Hallmark movies and all that, absolutely true. It's interesting when somebody like Alfred Hitchcock, who's had a long career going back to black and white films up to now, how he's really a suspense kind of guy, and the way he chooses to do it, looking for how there's like a modern version of that. Some people say Brian De Palma sucks and he rips off Hitchcock. I can't tell how many Hitchcock bastards I've heard out there that just want to say it. It's like, you know what? I don't really care who he steals it from. I just care about the end content. And North by Northwest is still really great content to me.
Yeah. I think the next two movies I'm looking at are either doing is either To Catch a Thief or A Charade. Because I own To Catch a Thief. It's still a first watch for me. I've never watched. I've been meaning to sit down and watch it, but something always comes up, so I can't get. What
I think is great about To Catch a Thief and Alfred Hitchcock is when you go back and watch it, when you've seen it enough and the newness is worn off, you can go, what are they doing in this scene? And sometimes if you watch a film and you just don't even listen to it, and you go, okay, why did they shoot the shot this way? What effect does it have? Then you start noticing some of these things here, right? And so the more you get in like Hitchcock and you ask yourself, what is it that I really, really like about it? Is it the way he dresses? Is it the locations? Is it something like that? Is it the way they talk? Is it the way they act? That's what we try to do here on the Extreme Movie Show by talking about all these bigger themes sometimes and how they work. And so the whole idea of Hallmark's not to make fun of it. We would actually sit down and legitimately do it, because you know what? There is a market out there for something that's just feel good and put on the background, because you can only watch Charlie Brown and A Christmas Vacation and a few other films so many times. The movie you guys reviewed while I was out of town for the holidays, it happened on Fifth Avenue, very, very popular. And you know what? I don't think I've ever seen it. So I'm glad you guys tackled that.
Yeah, it's very good. It's another movie where you get a bunch of characters. As the movie goes on, you get more and more people added to the role, the scene, and it's just more chaos. Mm-hmm. It's a very good movie. Like I said, a lot of these movies, Shop Around the Corner, I've never seen that before, and that's something I'm glad I sat down and watched it, because now that I'm going to be turning 40, actually the past 4 years since I started doing this channel with you, I've watched a lot of movies I just usually turn my nose up and didn't care to watch because I just snubbed. But I will still not watch musicals. I don't care what anybody says. I'll be 90 years old, and I'll be like, I ain't watching a freaking musical.
You're going to watch Xanadu when we re-review it here on the Extreme Movie Show, because Gene Kelly, I will watch anything he's
I will watch the
best smile in the business of all time.
I'll watch clips of Xanadu.
Okay. You let everybody know what's coming up Tuesday and going into next week as we start getting back into the new year, back on our regular schedule.
Next Tuesday, we're just going to start doing Rock Hudson movies, and that's it. No, Tuesday we got to sit here from 1943, I think it is.
I believe so.
With Bogart, and that'll be airing, and then of a pull-up. So maybe I'll put some more Craig movies in there, and then maybe what else? I'm not sure, but check for the poll on Tuesday night, and then from then on we'll see what goes on. I think Professor Pixel should be back. I think he said the 10th is when he comes back.
Yeah, in a couple of weeks. So we have a Forever Night coming up on Friday. The poll, based on those results, is what we're going to review next Sunday.
Yeah. So he comes back on the 10th or something like that, but he won't be, or something, but he won't be back until that following week. So, yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of Forever Nights are going to be, there's another one already scheduled. So look for those. Yes. And for those who are mad because they call him Stanky or Shanky, they've taken your frustration and they've channeled it into basically by doubling down and saying it's Shanky.
La Croix. No, we have some passionate listeners to it, and I really appreciate that for the show because it is a lot of fun. It's a frustrating watch, technically speaking, and it's a damn shame. But you know what? And this is another stream, but man, you can go back and see a great print like North by Northwest. But God damn it, you have a difficult time finding a show that was somewhat of a cult hit back in the 90s for 3 seasons that you struggle to get a good print of. And by that, I mean audio issues, especially when they dice it up for 2 or 3 different countries and they pronounce things differently. But yeah, Forever Night will continue here on the Extreme Movie Show. For everybody involved here, guys, if we don't talk, obviously we won't by next week. Have a safe and happy holiday, whatever it is that you do or don't do. New Year's Eve,
have a good New Year.
We will be back on schedule. Next year is going to be a big year of more content, stuff like that too. So I appreciate you guys spending time with us this year. We've grown a lot this year. We'd like to grow at least that much more next year, if not more. Appreciate people that have joined us for the occasional stream here, filling in LK and others, people retweeting us out, letting everybody else they know, everybody that shows up. It's really appreciated that you just spend time with us and do that. As we say, we just literally go off the cuff at this nature. We pride ourselves on not doing prep work and all that, not to be lazy, but we want the viewing reactions to be genuine about it. So once you guys recommend something or have it that we go and review, that's what we do. We give you our thoughts about it.
I'll say this: I do make an effort to try to pronounce names correctly, or just get the correct names.
That's your gimmick, though, a little bit.
It frustrates me because when I watch something and someone doesn't even know who the actor is, it's like, or it's like they're like, that one guy, the other guy with a hat in this movie, he's great.
Because if it's not that good of a performance, I just go by functionality. I'm like, that's the likes the fight guy. That's the such and such guy.
Here's my only argument. You don't go on camera, so you could have the IMDb right next to you list of the characters.
Well, we talk, we don't read. Yeah. There you go, ladies and gentlemen, North by Northwest. Check it out. Good night.
Later, guys.
Happy 2025.
Yes,
Happy
and
New
as
Year.
always, leave a comment down below. Let's help with the algorithm, help share us out, and check out our older playlists because we really need the watch time on this. We even though it says we're over 1,000, we're not monetized. We need at least about 4,000 hours of watch time. We're roughly just under 2,000. So if you can, you don't have to have the sound on. Just let it play. let
the music play, as Shannon would say.
Just put your computer on, let it play for about a week. All right.
Good night now.
Later.